This is the 4th Deep Dungeon installment called Pilgrim's Traverse. This Deep Dungeon came out in patch 7.35 and here I am 2 weeks later after the release of this Deep Dungeon. So anyways, first I made my way towards the Crystarium and had this little chat with this freaking bright-eyed child or whatever, and made my way to Elmeg. And after going through like some quests or whatever, I finally unlocked the Deep Dungeon. And then I spoke with Vendau, I think that's how you pronounce the name, and then my journey of Pilgrim's Traverse began. So before we go straight into my journey of going through this deep dungeon, let's talk about some of the things that they introduced and some of the new things that they brought into this deep dungeon, whatever, right? So first off, let's start with the 3 new Pomanders for this deep dungeon. First one, you got Pomander of Haste, and this Pomander basically just decreases the cooldown of your weapon skills, spells, and your auto attacks as well. And this doesn't work for your OGCDs / abilities. Next up, you got the Pomander of Purification, which basically means it cures all debuffs that are Asunable, right? That you could press Asuna and cleanse the debuff. It can only work for those, but it also gives you a barrier that will erase the next debuff that gets put onto you. And lastly, we have the Pomander of Devotion, which guarantees you a votive candelabra on the next floor. Now, speaking of the votive candelabra, this is something they added for this deep dungeon, which you can interact with, and it could randomly spawn on any floor or whatever. And when you interact with it, you could get an effect that can benefit you or can fuck you up. So here's some things about the candelabras, right? It's random, it can spawn on any floors, right? But it won't spawn on any 9th floor of any floor set. So 9, 19, 29, etc, 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 right? It won't spawn in because when you use it, the buff effect will appear on the next floor but not on the current floor. So yeah, if you ever wonder why it doesn't pop up on the 9th floor or whatever, or any floor set, that's because they don't want you to have that good shit for the boss. And any votive candelabras that appear floor 30 or below, when you interact with it, it will always give you a positive effect, a buff that can help you or whatever, right? But when you get past floor 30 and interact with the candelabras, then you get a mixture of positive and negative effects. And speaking of those effects, there's plenty of them. You have the positive and the negatives. So first off, positive effects. Let's start with those. Alright, first up, you got Primordial Flesh, which basically turns you into a mud ball. And when you press your attack button, you move hella fast, right? And you leave trails of mud, just like in Splatoon. But when you roll over enemies, it insta kills them, and it gives them a little knockback and insta kills them, right? And speaking of that little knockback, if the floor has a knockback penalty and you have that mud ball, the attack won't instantly kill them because there's no knockback. The knockback grants you that insta kill, but the mud ball does pretty good damage, so you still want to take advantage of the mud ball shit. Next up, you have Immolation, which turns you into the Godmother. Now the Godmother has one attack just like the mud ball, but this time it does explosion fire shit, and it's a 15 young point blank AoE from you and around you. And of course it insta kills them, but it also kind of depends on your 8 to pull armor maybe, and depending on depending on the debuffs that you get. But also this effect gives you a maximum HP boost, which is by 100%, which is crazy. And the thing is, when you get out of that transformation, that maximum HP buff stays with you until the next floor. Next up, we have Anointments, which basically is a regen, and it's not just in a region, it regens all of your HP. If you have 100k HP, it will regen 100k HP. And next up, we have Modifications, which basically increases your damage and damage taken by 30%. And also any weapon skill or ability that you use, it will give you basically HP. It's kind of like Bloodbath, like the DPS is Bloodbath. It's kind of like that basically. basically. Next up, we have rapid recitation, which basically reduces the cooldowns of all of your abilities by 50%. So like wildfire. Wildfire is an ability, but it's freaking 2 minutes. It's a 2-minute ability, right? But with this buff, it goes down to 1 minute, 60 seconds. So basically I could use it more and help with like, you know, with damage and shit like that. Now this buff doesn't work on charge abilities like double check or checkmate. Machinist has 3 charges of those, but the buff won't work on those. Next up, we have swift passage, which means you move hella fucking fast. Basically, you're Sonic, you're hella fast. And lastly, for the positive effects, you have false frailty, which, you know, if you don't have a high, one of the Pomanders is Pomander frailty, and it does what you think it does. Enemies do less damage, and the damage that they take in is by 30%. And also, if you have this buff and an enemy spawns in, or you spawn it in a mimic from opening chest, the buff will also affect them as well. Now that's all of the positive effects. Now moving on to the negative effects, but there's not that many negative effects, but just 3 of them. First one up is Gathering Gloom, which basically is gloom. So next up, you have Treacherous Ground, which basically increases the number of traps on the next floor. Now that doesn't mean that like, oh, there's going to be like 2 or 3 traps in one room. No. Kind of basically means that like, oh, probably each room has a trap. But even with this debuff, there's not going to be a trap where you spawn in or the room that you spawn in, right? So, and lastly, we have Blind Faith, which basically makes the map hidden. And you look at the map or the deep dungeon, it shows a question mark. So basically, you know, with this debuff, you know, now you have to like play, now you got to play memory. You got to remember like which room has an exit if you're exploring, looking out for chests, or like you could place down waymarks to help you out, you know. And that is all of the buffs and debuffs that you could get from the candelabras. Now let's talk about the floor debuffs. So inability, blindness, haste, and no sprints are not in this. Now there's one new floor debuff, and it's probably specifically for this deep dungeon, is the instance debuff, which basically you can't use any instances. And speaking of instances, this is something that SE introduced in this deep dungeon, and you can only get them from silver chest. Now there are 3 different types of instances. First one up is called Maze Root. Maze Root is a mixture of the Pomander of Sight, Serenity, and Witching. When you use it, you can see the whole entire floor. It cleanses the floor debuffs and buffs, and also it spawns in the fairy. And when you fight enemies, it returns them into like a leaf bush man or whatever, basically kind of like a witching. Now this witching attack from the fairy is the Tony Young Kono AoE and has a cooldown of 20 seconds. But also the Maze Rule, it opens the exit and also turns on the altar of return. And also the fairy heals you if you're below like 70% HP, I think, somewhere around there. And also the fairy does attack the enemies as well. It doesn't just do the witching effect or whatever, it also attacks the enemies as well. And next up, you have Bark Bomb. When you use it, it gives you a plus 100% maximum HP. And if you're doing this deep dungeon with other party members, it also gives them the maximum HP boost. But also, it spawns in a fairy just like the Maze Route. But this fairy from this Bark Bomb instance does the highest DPS. And also, it does like an AoE lightning attack on the enemy, and basically gives them a lightning dot. And also, just like the Maze Route instance, the fairy can heal you as well if your HP is below 70% or somewhere around there. It's basically your Onion Knight from Eureka Orthos. And lastly, we have Poison Fruits, which is basically a magicite from Heaven or High. So anyways, for all that said, as you can see here, I'm making my way through this floor set, the first floor set, and basically just, you know, making my way to exits and exits. You know, the enemies are not too dangerous and stuff like that. And as you can see here, floor 5, you know, I had the sprint buff on the candelabra, and you can see me here just running, you know. And also the bronze chest can turn to a mimic. So then we got the first boss, and the first boss is this shit. So this enemy is not too bad, you know. First he does like this mechanic where, you know, you gotta find a safe spot, you know, before the things from Tremors comes out of nowhere and do AoEs. Then once they pop out, you know, you gotta kill the ads. You know, there will be 3 ads, and since I'm a machinist, a DPS, you can basically kill them pretty fast even with low armor. But if you don't kill them in time, as the boss is doing a leaf match, which basically tells you where the boss is gonna jump, and the boss is gonna jump 4 times. As the boss is about to jump, the ads will charge towards you or jump towards you and do like a little knockback on you. So if you can't kill the ads in time, you know, make sure you're gonna get knocked back towards the area where the boss is gonna jump to. And ideally you want to take out like 2 of the ads if you can't kill all of them, because you know the ads jumping on you and doing that knockback on you, it does a pretty good amount of damage to you, so you got to be careful. So then going to the next floor, and as you can see, like the place is getting like, I don't know, getting overtaken by the lights. So you can see like the enemies are like sin eaters, some shit like that. And the boss is not too bad, you know. Eventually the boss will levitate, and basically you look at the 4 hands of the 4 legs, and basically you want to look at the leg that gets lit up last, get knocked back towards the direction of the last leg. They will leave cracks in the ground and they will explode in the order of the legs being lit up, basically. And then you get a marker on you, which basically you want to plant it on the edge of the wall or whatever, and it will leave an AoE. The AoE turns into a Titania snowflake AoE or whatever, vines AoE or whatever. And so you want to dodge those and dodge AoEs and shit like that. So moving on to the next floor sets, 21 to 30. As you can see, we're in a different place. I have no idea where we are, but if you look out of the windows, we're underwater. So this is probably Rapture. You know, we're in Rapture from BioShock maybe. But there is this one room in this like floor type or whatever, and it's a huge room. And sometimes it could be pillars, and sometimes there won't be pillars. And this big ass room, I am just like, okay, like this room is pretty huge. Like what? So then we have the floor 30 boss. And you know, this boss is not too bad. Dodge the cleave, you know, look at the iron that's glowing and move in into the arm that he cleave with, because he's gonna do like a freaking 230-degree AoE to the other side, whatever. And then just dodge rings and dodge the speeding blades and stuff like that. And then you have a chasing AoEs coming after you, and yeah, it's not too bad. And after defeating Forgiving Treachery, I now unlock the option to start from floor 31. And as you can see here, you know, this is the 3rd checkpoint that I unlocked. You know, the 2nd checkpoint was floor 21. And so basically I launched into floor 21 to 30 again, you know. And basically I did this just to get more Aetherpool armor and also get more of the Pilgrim potions, basically just to get ready. And also I'm also using 2 save files. So basically, if I complete a floor set on my first save file, I'll jump into the 2nd file and run that floor set again, so I could get more experience, learn more, and get more practice on this floor sets and the boss on that floor set as well. So then after some little grinding of doing floors 21 to 30, I decided to jump into the next floor set, 31 to 40, because there's a checkpoint on floor 31, so I might as well just, you know, do the next floor set. So floors 31 to 40, not too bad. Now silver chests can turn into mimics, and like there's some enemies where like, you know, that could be, you know, somewhat, you know, dangerous, you know, if you're not careful. Like the Pegasus, it would do a gallop on you and it will rush towards you and basically knock back you. So make sure like your back is facing towards the wall when you get knocked back. And then, you know, sometimes it would do a night curve, which is a point blank AoE on it. And you have the soldier stone, it would do a hand of judgment, which is kind of like a pull in. But if you're like kind of like a little far away from the soldier stone, it won't do it. Then it will place an AoE on you, and then it will follow up with a larger AoE, but it's untelegraphed. And it can also do a line of fire AoE as well. And also you have this enemy here where when you fight it, it would do mana boost, and basically the enemy buffs themselves, and you know, they would get like a damage up. But when it's almost like about to die, it would do an enraged cast called Forward Unto Dust, and basically this is like an AoE where if you get hit by it, you die, but you can't LOS it. And the thing is, the enemy will keep on doing it until you die or until you kill it. And you have the Forgive and Play, which is a roamer or patrol, and it would do a poison pollen pair, and basically it would do a front cleave and it would do a back cleave, but it's untelegraphed. So when it does this, you know, basically just stand on the flanks of the enemy, you know, just stand on the sides, and you know, you'll be safe. And the thing is, this attack pattern, you know, the front telegraph cleave and the untelegraphed back cleave, this is not going to be the last time that we will see an enemy do this type of attack pattern. But the thing is that like, you know, the enemies in this deep dungeon, they're pretty squishy, so like, you know, you basically kill them before they even do their freaking mechanic. Unless you're a healer, you know, which, you know, takes time for healers to kill the enemies. And also in this deep dungeon, just like in Eureka Orthos, the enemies, when they attack you, they can't be able to crit you. So, and then we have the level 40 boss, and this boss is not too bad, you know. Obviously, don't touch the wall, but, you know, it would do a mechanic where it will spawn in 2 ads. And the thing is, if you look at the boss, it will shoot out water. And depending on the color, if it's yellow, that means it would do it point blank. And also you want to look at the ads because they would do the same animation, basically telling you which, you know, which AoE is gonna pop up where, and then, you know, telling you, you know, when to dodge or whatever. But if the water is blue, that means it's gonna do a knockback. So, you know, the boss will be first, and then, you know, you want to get knocked back to where the next ad is shooting, and then basically telling you what to get knocked back to. After the ads do their mechanic, they'll become targetable and basically kill them, because if you don't kill them, they'll do it in rage. And also at the same time, the boss is either casting near tide or far tide. And near tide basically means the boss is going to do a pretty huge point blank, and far tide basically means donuts, so basically go inside the hitbox or whatever. So after running floors 31 to 40, you know, many times to get on my Aether Pool armor and also getting a hella bunch of program potions, I decided to move forward to the next floor set. Floors 21 to 50. Now we are in Amarong, or however you want to pronounce it. We're in the desert or whatever. This floor set is not too bad. There's some enemies that are like, okay, you know, this is kind of weird. So you have this patrol Groot here, and he does the same thing as the Forgiven Plague. It does a creeping combination where it would do a frontal cleave and then turn around to do an untelegraphed back cleave or whatever you want to call it. Same thing, just like the Plague. And the thing is, this is not the last time we will see an enemy do this in this deep dungeon. And then you have the rock golem, the petrifigi, and it does magnetic shock, which is a pulling, but if you go far from it, you won't get pulling. And then it does a plane cracker AoE, which is like a medium-sized AoE from the enemy. And you have the antlion, and it does a 1-2 march. Basically, it would do the first AoE, line AoE, or rush, but then it would turn around and rush back to its original spot. So, you know, it's kind of like a gotcha mechanic. And then you have an interesting enemy, and it's the Troubadour, and it's basically a tortoise, but when you fight it, it moves slow, just like a tortoise. But the thing is, if you go close to it, the auto attacks from the Troubadour does a significant amount of damage to you. So the thing is, if you're a melee, you want to stay like within range from this freaking tortoise. But then it would do a tortoise stomp, which is like your window to go in and attack it if you're a melee, right? And the cast is long, so like, you know, that's your cue to attack. But make sure to move away when the cast is about to end, because the stomp is like a point blank AoE from the tortoise. But like, if you're a range, I mean, you have the advantage. So like, you know, you can literally just kill it. And then you have the floor 50 boss, Ubunabali. And basically, you want to stand on like these rocks or whatever, because it would do liquefaction, which is classic quicksand or whatever mechanic. Dodge the AoEs, you know, and like the thing is that like if you step on the quicksand, you'll be given 5 seconds before, you know, you sink down to the bottom of the earth. But also it gives you a no knockback buff as well. And then it does sandpit here, which is kind of like a following AoE or chasing AoEs, but it's from the boss. The boss will become untargetable for a bit, but then you could target as the freaking boss is doing this chasing AoE or animation or whatever. And then you have Wind Razor, which spawns in a tornado in the middle. And as you can see here, it has like a timer or whatever, and when the countdown reaches 1 second, you want to hit the quicksand, because the quicksand gives you that no knockback. And when you're in the quicksand, the knockback won't affect you, so you'll do the mechanic correct. And then for the rest of the fight, the boss will just keep doing the chasing AoEs, and then at the last second, you want to solve the tornado by entering the quicksand, as you can see here. Floors 51 to 60, and this floor is not too bad as well. There's some enemies where you gotta be careful, and you can probably get one-shotted, I think, maybe. So here you have the patrol, the forest Rockos, and it would do a pain storm, which is a large Kono attack. And sometimes it could do a large point blank painful gust, as you can see there. And we have the Gargants, where you fight it, it would do a pull-in. And after that, it will follow up with a heavy scrape line, which is a point blank. And you want to be careful if you're about to fight this enemy, because sometimes it won't do the pull-in first, but sometimes like if you pull it, like you don't want to like accidentally get pull in through like the middle of the room and accidentally step into a trap. We have another patrol, the Sand Serpent, and it does an Earthen Auger, and when it does this, you want to go behind the enemy because it would do a 270-degree AoE and it's untelegraphed, but you just stay behind it and you should be fine. And then the Psychonia, and it does Baphomet Ball, which is an AoE, and you're within the AoE, you die, but you can interrupt it or you can LOS it, and then it could do either Mighty Spin, Point Blank AoE, or a Trounce, which is a Kono, which, you know, just stand on the flanks or behind the enemy. And we have the Howler here. It does Barely Smash. It will do the freaking rush attack, and then it will follow up with either Scythe Tail, which is a Point Blank AoE, or it could do Master 11, which is a Donut AoE. And then we have the Drake or the Monitor, and when you fight it, it would do a Burning Cyclone Kono, and then it would do Smoldering Scales, which basically gives itself a buff, and which basically means that like your auto attacks that damage the Drake, it will damage you as well. It only counters auto attack damage, not like your like abilities or weapon skills, only your auto attacks. As you can see here, I took like 45k damage from my auto attack, so you want to be careful. And also out of combat, the Drakes, they can sometimes put like the buzz on themselves, and you can tell because, you know, they have like the fire effect on them, so like, you know, you want to be careful. And then we have the floor 60 boss, and it does a spine shot, and when it does this, you want to stand in the flanks because it would do a front and behind attack on telegraph. And then it would do branch out, you know, it would summon these cactars or whatever, sabotenders, and the sabotenders to do like a square AoE. So the larger sabotenders to do a larger square AoE, and basically it does like a 3x3 square AoE. And the smaller ones, they only do a square AoE on their tile that they're on. And basically you want to look at the third set of cactars or sabotenders that spawn in, and then like, and as soon as the first set AoEs go off, you just move in where the first set of cactars were in, and then basically you saw the mechanic there. And then you have this thing called Tombstone March or One Stone March, and basically the cactars are going to move by 2 tiles or 1 tile, you know, in the direction that they're going. So it could be Tombstone March or One Stone March, and you want to pay attention to the bigger cactar in the middle because following that cactar can help you find the safe spot. And then there's a Speed of Needles, which is, you know, we've seen this mechanic before, but you want to stay close to the hitbox so you can like move around the boss faster, because the ball spins quite fast, so like, you know, you might get clipped and get vuln ups. So this was my first attempt, and like, you know, I couldn't get the march mechanic down, and I was like, I what? And not gonna lie, like a lot of the stuff that I like ventured through in this deep dungeon, like I learned all by myself. You know, I watched like some videos of like, you know, like the bosses, the floors, but like there's like some stuff where I was like, oh, I'd never seen that before. I was like, wait a minute, I never seen this mechanic in the videos that I watched. What? So then I get clipped by 3 AoEs and I died. Yes, I died. Yeah, it was funny. So then I jumped to my second file, and as you can see here, the freaking boss is moving hella fast. I get 2 vuln ups, but you know, I ended up like solving the march mechanics, you know, just like, you know, learning, you know, I'm freaking learning, and I ended up clearing the boss. So the thing was that like the first save file that I died in, you know, the first attempt that went wrong, I ended up starting on floor 51 and started climbing back up to the floor 61, which is the next floor set. Floor 61 to 70. Now this is where, you know, everything probably one-shots you. And also now gold chests could turn to mimics. So we have a Talos here, and it's a patrol, and it would do accelerate, and this basically does an AoE, but it places an AoE on you depending on your position when it started casting accelerate. So just move away, and the AoE is not too big, you know, as you can see there, but you know, it would do a follow-up AoE and it would be a lot larger, and it's untelegraphed. Now I think it is a donut AoE. It looks like there's a safe spot in the middle, but I don't know, it looks freaking claustrophobic. But and we have Godzilla here, and basically what Godzilla does is that like it does a left-sided or right-sided shockwave, but after it does this telegraph swipe or whatever, you want to move it to the other side, because after that it will swipe the other side and it's untelegraphed. And this is not the last time that we will see enemy do this type of attacking pattern or move. And we have the contention, and basically it does a several thousand needles, which is a line AoE, you know, just stand behind it, and then it will buff itself with a haste, and which basically makes its auto attack a lot quicker, so you'll be taking more damage, but also the cast of the several thousand needles will be faster as well. So, you know, be careful of that and be mindful of that. And then we have a weird enemy in this floor set, and you can't see it until you get really close to it. In combat, it's not too bad. It just freaking gap closes to you and just body press you, which is a point blank. When you're going through a room, you know, you want to go slow. You know, you want to make sure that, like, you know, you can see the freaking ninja frogs, because like if you see an empty room or like a room with like one enemy, even though you don't have the command or flag turned on, there's probably a bunch of ninja frogs there. So like, you know, you gotta make sure, you gotta be careful. And the aggro type on this enemy is sight, so like you can just easily maneuver around it, but like, you know, you gotta find it first, and you know, be careful of your AoE attacks and stuff like that. And then we have Imparity. It does Isle Drop, which is a freaking AoE on you, but this enemy is quite dangerous because it does a move called Rock Slide, and it does a cross AoE, and the cross AoE is quite huge. You want to make sure you're positioning the Imparity in a way where, like, you know, you have space, or like, you know, you're making the hallway like a safe spot basically, especially in you're in a situation where you gotta fight it in the hallway. And also another thing that sucks about this enemy is that the aggro type is proximity. And in my first attempt at this floor, I was fighting this in the parity, and I was kind of like testing like how big the freaking cross AoE was, and it was pretty big, and I got hit by 2 of the AoEs. Damn, those are pretty huge. So the level 70 boss is a freaking Cyclops, and then, you know, it would jump to like a freaking random cardinal or whatever. It does the glower, and then like based on where the glower actually comes from, like, you know, east to west or west to east or north south, etc, etc, there will be orbs spawning in, and basically the orb does a donut AoE, and you basically just like follow the orbs, you know, after the AoE telegraph goes off. And as you can see here, the orbs spawn from east to west, so basically I moved to east to west. And then at the same time, the boss would do a glower, and you know, you want to dodge the glower but also dodge the donuts. And then, you know, it does a door's eye, and then the freaking Cyclops beams like a ring, like the outer part of the arena, and basically do the same thing. Look for the first orb that spawns in and just follow it. And then the boss could do 2 things. If the boss does 2000 meter swing, that means a point blank, so you make sure you want to stay on like this outer ring of the arena, somewhere around there. It's a point blank AoE. Or if it does disorienting groan, that means it's going to be a knockback. And then it does octopus swipe, and you know, we've seen this mechanic before. You guys already know what to do. You know, you could just like stand in the freaking areas where it's been cleaved and just follow the Cyclops where it's cleaving, and then you'll be good. And basically that's the whole fight. Moving on to floor 71 to 80, and just like the last floor set, there's some enemies that are kind of weird. So first you have a patrol hold duel, and when you fight it, it does a fracture point blank AoE, which is not bad. But when you kill it, it actually doesn't die, because when all of its HP gets depleted, it will do self-destruct and basically go away. And the self-destruct AoE, you can LOS it, and it's a pretty huge AoE. But if you get damaged, it's based on proximity. So like if you get hit but like you're far away from the actual enemy, then you're not going to take as much damage compared to if you're actually close to the enemy and then freaking does the AoE, you're probably gonna die. And also one thing about this enemy is that it has a knockback immunity. So if you hit it with the mud ball buff or whatever, it won't instantly kill them because it has a cheat code, which is unlimited short cast / arm's length. And then we had the spite, and it can either do 2 things. If it does shrinking circles of ablution, that means it's gonna do a donut and then point blank, so basically in and out. But if it does the alternative version, which is growing circles of ablution, then that means it's gonna be out and in. And then we have the elegance, which is a patrol, and it does hail of heals. It would do a 180 cleave in front of it, but it will cleave 4 times. As you can see here, it just stays in place and just cleaves forward or whatever 4 times. And yeah, you know, it's not too bad. Stone Eater, when you fight it, it will do a knockback on you, so be careful. You know, make sure you aim yourself towards the wall, and it will also leave a dot on you, the poison, but it's not too bad. And of course, we gotta have an enemy that instantly kills you with their out of combat AoEs, and this is the Forgiven Corruption, and it's these birds or whatever, the Sin Eater birds. And when it does Rolling Barrage, and it's a long cast, but basically if you get hit by this AoE, which is a pretty huge AoE, you die. But you can LOS it as well, but you want to stop the cast, I mean, you could just fight it. And like fighting this thing is not too bad, it's pretty easy. All it does is just forward barrage, which is like a small conal AoE in front of it, and it's not bad. But you know, when you're traversing through the room, you know, make sure you look through the rooms before you go in there, you know, because, you know, just in case, you know, you make sure you look out for birds in this freaking floor set. And then we have the Slander, and it could do Metamorphic Blast, which is a freaking conal AoE from it. Or it could do Orogenic Storm, which places a point blank AoE on you depending on your position when you start casting the freaking mechanic. And And then we got the floor 80 boss, Forgive and Profanity. So you gotta make sure you watch your fucking mouth. And you could do two things: Warring Ring, which is a donut, or you could do Perilous Ring, which is an out. And also at the same time, you want to look at the whiskers, which way like they're going or glowing, so you could dodge behind the boss or in front of the boss. And then you have this mechanic where you have these orbs freaking connecting each other like the constellations in the sky. And basically you want to look at the last one that gets tethered, which is the one that is at the wall. And then when it gets to that orb, it would do a huge AoE and just move away from it. Just move the opposite direction of the last orb. And then you have the main mechanic, which is Prowling Death. And you can either get two things. You got this thing called Nowhere to Run, which basically, you know, if you walk, you'll be given a stack. And if you get 8 stacks, you die. So if you have this mechanic, you gotta dodge Warrior Ring and also the whiskers at the same time while doing minimal movement. So you want to stay close to the boss so you don't do too much movement. Now I say that you could get 2 things from the Prowling Death mechanic, you know, and one of them was the Nowhere to Run. This was my first time doing this fight, and I got the Shadow of Death debuff, and this is where I was like, what is it? Like, I didn't know what to do. So I thought I failed the mechanic, right? I failed the mechanic and I died, and I was like, wait, what? Now, good thing I had 3 more raises, but I was confused. I was like, wait a minute, what does that do again? Like, did I forget? Like, what? So then I got it again, and I was like, what do I do? And like, I'm reading the debuff. I was like, what? And then, you know, I didn't know what to do at all. And then before I was about to die, I take a look at it, try to read it as fast as I can, and I saw something like light expected damage and something like that, and I died. But as I was standing there, and I was like, wait a minute, it said it could be cleansed with something light expected damage, and I'm sitting there thinking like, wait, okay, I get it now. So then I got the Shadow of Death debuff again, and I was like, okay, I think I know what I need to do. So you gotta dodge the in and out, but you gotta get hit by the whiskers, by the light. So as you can see here, it's a donut warring, but I stand in front of the boss because it's gonna cleave that way because of the whiskers. You get hit by the light and it cleanses your Shadow of Death debuff, and that's how you do that mechanic if you get that debuff. So I was like, damn, the insight has been increased. Floors 81 to 90. Now we're back inside. We're no longer outside anymore. So you have the rider, and eventually it would do this attack or whatever, and basically this attack is a knockback, and it hits you 4 times and basically 4 knockbacks. So you want to make sure you're against the wall, and then it would do a Kono AoE here, Storm Slash, and that's it. Now if you LOS the knockback attack, instead of rider hitting you 4 times, it hits you 3 times. And then we got the Kama, and basically it does a Scythe and Tail attack, which is the front and back attack, just like the Plague and just like Groot. And then the Cerberus, it would do Lightning Bolt, which places a freaking point blank AoE on you depending on where you are when it starts casting. And then it could either do Terror Blow, which is a Kono behind the Cerberus, or it could do Hellclaw, which is a front Kono attack. And then we have the Gremlin, and it could do a Claw, which is a frontal Kono, but it could also give you a slow debuff for 12 seconds. And if you use the Pomander Haste before fighting the Gremlin, the slow debuff will overtake that haste. So, and also like if you kill the Gremlin while you have the slow debuff, the debuff will go away once you kill the Gremlin. And then we have the Lion, the Ball, and it kind of does the same thing as the Corruption. It would do an out of combat AoE, and you know, you would die from it if you get hit by it, but you can LOS it and the AoE is huge. And when you fight it, it does Abyssal Ray, which is a huge line AoE. And the thing is, you can't LOS it. I don't know, like there's something about line AoEs that you can't LOS. And then you have a patrol, the Humbaba, and basically when you fight it, you either do a triple blow or quadruple blow, and basically you want to count how many times he punches you, right? Like you do the animation of him punching you. Triple blow means he's gonna punch you 3 times, so you want to count. And after the 3rd time, you want to go behind the enemy because he would do an untelegraphed Kono AoE that, you know, that will kill you. And then you probably have one of the most like dangerous or enemy, I guess, is the Succubus. And basically when you fight it, she will put a marker on you called Passion's Heat. And basically when you get hit by this, you will get a pyretic. And this is true stillness. Like you can't move, you can't attack, you can't use any items or food or whatever. This is true stillness. I don't know if that's an actual term, but I'm calling it true stillness, alright? I know the Succubus is hard as fuck, but like, you know, you gotta stay alive, okay? But you could also LOS this Passion's Heat. So, you know, when you're fighting it, you know, just LOS the freaking pyretic thing. Now you're probably wondering, well, what about Queen, you know, or Wildfire? The weird thing is, if you have the pyretic on and then the Wildfire explodes, you don't die. And same thing for Queen here. As you can see, I'm literally had the Pyretic and Queen is still punching the shit out of the succubus. So if this can work for Queen, then it probably works for Dark Knight 16 and the freaking Summoners, Primals, and the Fairy, probably. And then we have Malako, the boss here, and then it would do a backhand, and he's gonna do a cleave, and the safe spot is where his fists are glowing. And ideally, you want to stand like here, like between the rear and the flank, like somewhere around here, and the glowing hand could go to the left or to the right of the boss, depending where he's going. And then you had Twin Wing or Four Hind Treachery, and if it's Twin Wing, that means the front and the rear is safe. At the same time, you want to dodge the beams from outside the arena, as you can see here, and basically just find the safe spot. The boss is also attacking like the flanks, like to his sides, basically like the 4 squares to his sides, whatever you could think of that. And if it's Four and Hind Treachery, it's basically the opposite. The 4 squares to the left and the right of the boss is safe, and front and behind of the boss is unsafe because he's gonna clip those. And then Hot Iron, just dodge AoEs, and then like if you pay attention to the boss, like he will face towards like a certain cardinal, kind of like Titan from Uwu, and basically he's gonna jump to a cardinal, and then he's gonna do a skin flare, which is a knockback, and basically just go towards the boss to get knocked back. You can use shortcut / arm's length this, and then just dodge the beams, and yeah, that's it. And that's basically the whole fight. You just repeat. And now we're in the last floor set of this deep dungeon. The enemies are not too bad. I mean, it's scary and you get one shot, okay? So yeah, the patrol sawtooth, and it could do 3 things: honey front, which means it's going to do a cleave in front of it, and it could also do honey right or honey left. But here's the thing, just stay in the front when it does that, because if you look, the AoE, it doesn't even clip like, you know, the front part of the freaking enemy. We have the warg, and it could do quadruple skull dasher. I think this is a triple, but I don't know. But quadruple skull dasher, which basically means that, you know, it freaking dashes to you 4 times, right? And then after the 4th time, you want to move away from the warg because he's going to do a point blank untelegraphed AoE. And here we have the dreamer, and it does a dark vision line AoE, and you can't LOS the line AoEs for some reason in these higher floors. But it's the same thing as the holder, where if you kill it, it won't die. It would do the self detonate and, you know, just get away from it. And you can LOS it, and also just like the holder, it has a permanent knockback immunity. We have the Archaeal Demon, and it does Unholy Darkness, which places a AoE on you depending on your position when you start casting it. So when you see this cast, just reposition, move away from your previous spot, or you can interrupt it. And then, you know, it's gonna follow up with a Karma large Kono AoE. And here we have the Bachelor, and when you fight it, it's gonna do Acne Web, which, you know, places a web on you, and you'll be slowed down, but, you know, you can just get out of the AoE. And then it's gonna follow up with Shadow Burst, which is a point blank AoE. But you can also LOS the web AoE, so you have to deal with it, but just be ready because the Bachelor is gonna freaking rush towards you and do the Shadow Burst AoE. And then we have King Kong here, and King Kong does the same thing as Godzilla. He's gonna do right smite or left smite, and once you see him smash on the ground, you want to move it to the other side, just like the Godzilla one. And then we have the floor 99 boss fighting against 2 bosses here, and you have these light puddles and dark puddles on the freaking ground. And the thing is, like, when you step into each of these puddles, you're gonna get a debuff, a light or dark debuff, and this is gonna be basically how you damage the bosses. And if you have light debuff, you're only gonna be doing damage to the Eminent Greed and not the Devour Eater. But with the dark debuff, you can do damage to the Devour Eater, but not the Eminent Greed. And also, if your debuff goes out, you die. And also, when you're fighting the 2 bosses, you want to make sure the HP are kind of the same, you know, like within 15 to 20% HP from each other. If you don't, then they're going to get like a damage up and an HP, or like they get like HP back or something like that. So yeah, you don't want to do that. So when you're fighting against this boss, you know, you want to make sure you keep an eye on both for the health. And so yeah, some mechanics like Chains of Condemnation, which means when you see this cast for one of the bosses, that means you don't move. It's not true stillness, you can still attack and stuff like that, but you just can't move. And also you want to look at the light enemy, because you're either going to do the 2 blades or just a 1 huge blade or whatever. And the 2 huge blades means go in the middle of the arena, and the large 1 blade means get out of the middle of the arena. And if the boss does Ball of Fire, that means you're going to bait AoEs, you know, just 1 AoE. But in solo, it's going to be like 4 AoEs. So, you know, when you do this, just like kind of like move around or whatever. Once the cast ends, just keep moving, and then you see the AoEs that you baited, and you should be fine. And then you have Bound to Sin, where it's going to pull into the middle, and then you have AoEs spinning in a circle or whatever. And wherever you see the first AoE spawn in, that's where you want to go to get out. Because if you stay in there, you know, you're going to get hit by AoE. And also, you don't get hit by the, you know, these smaller AoEs. And then you have spine lash, and it would put a marker on you, and the boss follows you. And basically, you want to stand on these yellow lines on the arena, and when you look behind you, is aiming towards the pillars or like the area between the windows, because when you destroy a window, it will spawn in an ad, and you want to kill the ad. But you just stay on the yellow lines, and you should be good. Like, you don't have to worry about it. And then we have Abyssal Blaze, which is the exoflare mechanic. And so the boss is going to tear fabric to reality, right? And if it does this tearing animation where it's tearing like vertically, and then he was spawning these 4 like orbs, you know, basically telling you like the direction of the AoE / exoflares. And then the boss would tear horizontally, which means the second set will go horizontal, the AoEs, the exoflares. And so with this knowledge, you know, you can find the safe spot. So in this example right here, the first set of crystals were vertical. So I already know that the west area of the arena is safe. And also I already know that like the second set is going to be horizontal. Now it's just like, okay, you know, where's the safe spot at? So the second set of crystal spawns in, and I see a crystal at the north area of the arena. So now I know south is safe. And also knowing that the west area is safe, that means southwest of the arena is safe. And then you had Drain Ether, and you want to look at the cast of the 2 bosses. Whoever's going to finish their cast first, you want to make sure you get the debuff that counters their Drain Ether. So if the cast is about to finish for Imminent Grief, then you want to get the light debuff. And then right after that, you want to switch to the opposite to deal with the other boss's Drain Ether as well. Devour Eater, you want to get the Dark. And the easy way I think about this is Devour Dark. They have D's in their freaking word. That's how I remember it. Eminent Light, Devour Dark, and I just repeat that in my head. And that's all the mechanics in this fight. As you go on with the fight, you know, the boss combines them, right? You know, you do the exoflare, and then he will do a chain of condemnation or ball of fire, Drain Ether, and then he will do the exoflare. It's like, okay, you know, can you remember the safe spot or whatever, and you know, shit like that and stuff like that. So then I killed the boss, and I went through the exit, and I made up to the finale area or whatever. But I didn't decide to continue on or interact with this small altar. I instead just left, and yeah, and that was it. But since I went past floor 99, I now unlocked the floor 99 boss to where, you know, I can practice it or whatever, right? Only difference is that like you don't have your pawn menders or instances or anything. It's just you and the boss, and that's it. So I fought the boss and I did it, you know, I completed it. And then it was time to make my first attempt to climb from floor 1 to 100. I was like, I think I could one-shot this, you know, just like in Eureka Orthos. I think I could one-shot this. There is a lot of fucking patrols. Holy shit. Devour Dark. Eminent Lights. Good. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Solo 1, floor, well, not floor, stone 1 to stone 100, and boom traverse. So let me look at the achievements. Yep, the Enlightened. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There it is. Me and my trusty, is that a chainsaw? Yeah, that looks like the chainsaw model. I don't know how this happened. I don't know. It's probably because the game can't freaking handle the amount of checkmates and double checks and drills, chainsaws all at the same time. But alright, well, time to get the screenshots. Time to get the fucking screenshot.